Well, good morning, Internet. It's 25th of March. Excuse me. Today's day 37, and it is nice and early in the morning. Goodness me. Just took a bunch of pills for my multivites and whatnot, and I'm getting that awesome feeling of that like little lump of I don't know what do you call that plastic that's around that kind of stuff, that dissolvable, the plastic capsules and all the rest. It's like you get a little lump of that when it gets connected with the water. After you've taken your water and you chuck the pills back, you get like this little ball of multivitamins, kind of like a like a molecule almost. You got a couple of big ones in the middle, and the little ones are attached, sort of stuck to the outside of it. Anyway, that's a entirely unnecessary inclusion into this morning's talk of. So, yesterday I had a therapist appointment. I typically I don't see a therapist. I have Zoom meetings at the moment, although it looks like we're going to be transitioning back to in person, which will be good, although it is on the other side of town, so it's kind of inconvenient for me to have to drive there. I think the plan will be to go maybe once every other month and then do the every other month online. But it was interesting to talk with the therapist. I've been working with her for a couple of years now. The first therapist that I ever had was a guy who talked about himself a lot. And when I say he talked about himself a lot, he talked about himself more than I did in the session, which I felt like was kind of a bit of a role reversal in a lot of ways. He had some good things to say, and I learned a little bit from him, but ultimately I had to give it up after... Actually, what happened was they booked an appointment with me, and then they changed the appointment, and they didn't contact me, and I showed up for an appointment, and I needed an appointment that day. I was struggling. This was post-divorce, like right after the divorce, and he wasn't there. And when I called, they were like, "Oh yeah, he's not working that day." And I said, "Well, you booked me in. I have it in my calendar. Like, I have the confirmation and everything." And they're like, "Well, we had to change it because he changed his office hours." And I was just like, "Well, fuck you then. I'm out." And that was the last time I saw him. And then I gave it 6 months, a year, and the same issues were coming up over and over again, and I was sort of struggling to overcome them. Oof. I was struggling to overcome them, and so I ended up with a different therapist, a person that I got through my company's employee assistance program. Here, I'm going to sing it out again. If you have an employee assistance program, don't be a dick. Don't be one of those people that's like, "My company sucks." Use your employee assistance program. The company spends money, like real money, on setting those things up. And if they offer you free shit, use it. If there's free therapist appointments, use them. That's free money, essentially. So I went to a second one because it was the following year. My 5 free sessions came back, and I went to see this person. And on the first session I was there, this person asked me, in not in great detail, but asked me very, very well targeted questions. I wasn't sure if she had dealt with anybody. Yeah, see, I'm adding her gender. She hadn't. I wasn't sure if she'd ever dealt with anyone in my position before. It seemed like she had a lot of experience with people in similar situations or who had come to her with similar things. But she asked me really good questions, and that was the first main difference between her and the other guy, was that she asked really good questions. And I was like, these things are making me think uncomfortable thoughts, but they're helping me peel back the layers. And so I resolved to be 100% honest with her, even though at the time I wasn't being 100% honest with my partner necessarily. That's not to say that I was lying, but I was definitely covering up some of the truth, or not talking about some of the truth. And I'm not going to go into detail what I was seeing this therapist for at the time, but she really did help me get back on the path towards where I am now, and ideally kind of the direction that I've been trying to take my life over the last sort of 4 years. which is to move away from destructive behaviors and bad patterns and try to be more successful in life. And not just successful in life, I'm having a good life, but like career, or not like career, but in my career, in my relationships, in my financial work, or my financial goals, and in general growing up into being an adult, because that huge disconnect that I had recently, where I was looking at where I started from, or where I was and where I wanted to be, considering the age that I'm at, that gap, I've been trying to narrow that gap so that when I hit 40, I can look at where I am in life and go and feel comfortable that that's where I am. Anyway, so she's been a real help with that by asking good questions and by being honest, and she's never been confrontational. It's always ever felt like she was an advisor, and I guess that's sort of, maybe that's what I need for my personality. But as a result, I've learned a lot, and when I have therapy with her, it's once a month. I typically see her like on the third or fourth Wednesday of every month, for an hour. It's covered by my health insurance, thank God, so I pay a $20 copay to get it. And I feel like an hour of therapy is worth $20 of copay. That's a pretty good deal for me. And it's been great. I think there's only ever been maybe 1 or 2 sessions that we've really just kind of blabbered on about politics and society, and not really talked about things that were concerns or issues that I had raised, about what I was perceiving in my life. And I'll talk a little bit about what we talked about and kind of briefly give some of the feedback that I got. I'm going to keep it deliberately vague. Obviously, I've spent the money on this, but I gave her a list of things that I wanted to talk about, and the first one was the fact that I've been drug-free for a while, and what that's meant, and the video game free, and what that's meant. We talked about my book and how satisfied I was to have done it, but also that I was keeping it close to the chest at the moment. I haven't been out advertising that I've finished the book because it isn't finished yet. I'm really still only up to proofing it, and while the content is there, I'm not ready to fully celebrate until the book is in its final form and it's either published or being published, or it's up somewhere for people to read. I talked about my friends and my emotional state with dealing with them recently, in particular that I've gotten a little more clean and I feel like I'm starting to put my foot in the right direction. The chance of relapse gets lower and lower and lower because I start to see the cycles of behavior that they exhibit that I would normally have exhibited, particularly when they ask me, well, when are you going to smoke up with us again? In my head I'm thinking, I don't want to smoke up with you. I don't want that to be a part of these relationships. I don't want to have to show up and be someone that has to get high in order to be involved in the group. And I think it would be better for us if we didn't. So I asked questions about what's appropriate for me to say, and like what kind of, essentially it turned into talking about boundaries. But yeah, and we talked about like the higher purpose question, the fact that I've been living over here and I don't really have sort of a group to belong to. Like I have some friends, but those friends were made largely around the fact that I was a drug user. And while they're good friendships, they're excellent friendships, one of them in particular, I need to transition into a group of people who are aiming their sights higher than I've been aiming my sights, so that I can use their excellence to help continue to bring me up. And then finally, we talked about the Clomid and the effects of it, and she gave me a lot of really good pointers for helping with the lack of libido and that sort of thing. So I guess today's message is, if you don't have a therapist and you're trying to quit drugs, get a therapist. Just get one. Go try to find one. And if you can't find one, go to a community help place and see if there's one that you can get that's cheap or free. excuse me, if possible. There's a lot of resources that people don't know exist, and all they need to do is get on the internet and just type in, community provided therapists or counselors, people who are paid by the state to essentially help people who can't afford or who don't have health insurance coverage that allows for psychiatric care, and if or counselor care. If you have health insurance, call your health insurance. Call them up and be like, hey, do you guys offer a program whereby I can visit a counselor? Because it's just so valuable to have a guide, to have someone that you can talk to who can look in from the outside, who has an understanding of how brains work and who has experience in dealing with people who are either quitting addictions or quitting addictive behavior, or who are pulling themselves out of bad situations. Maybe there was a messy divorce or a death in the family or whatever. I cannot recommend it enough. And I think it's going to end up being sort of one of my leading recommendations. It's already in the book. I've already put that in the book for people who are struggling outside of being able to manage it themselves. I've always said, go get a therapist, get a counselor. So, yeah, but for this purpose of this talk today, I wanted to bring that up, and I wanted to recommend it. I wanted to recommend it. So anyway, like I said, that's it for me. Day 36 or 37. Feeling good, feeling fine. We're almost at halfway. We're about a week and week and a day from halfway. So that's exciting. Anyway, that's it for me. Ka kite.